Welcome to the finale of the Kids of Degrassi Street. It's 1985 and Degrassi's produced their final 6 episodes, also known as Season 7. We already explored the changes in script writing, and we know the final 6 episodes will be interconnected as the kids work together on a yearbook all season long. We've also officially grown up from the first generation of Degrassi kids. Ida, Noel, Irene, and Chuck will no longer appear in these final episodes. Instead, we follow the kids who will go on to graduate into Degrassi Junior High. So let's sit back, blow the dust off our old yearbook covers, and take a trip through the history of Degrassi.
Why does everyone say I'm grumpy?
The very first episode is Connie Makes a Catch, and we went through Connie's story pretty in depth last week, so we'll move on to next week's episode, Karen Keeps Her Word. The star of the show is Anaya Skranovsky. Of course, we know her better as Lucy Fernandez until the end of Degrassi High, and she makes a few more appearances in The Next Generation, even going on to direct this episode about Hazel. But for now, we know her as Karen. Now, these stories all follow the ABC story structure with the yearbook as a running plot line, but instead of diving into 3 separate plots for each episode, I want to show you something really cool. During Karen Keeps Her Word, CBC stopped by to do a story on the Kids of Degrassi Street. You can even see them filming the episode. Here's the behind-the-scenes shot versus the actual on-screen shot. They interview co-creator Linda Schuyler and the actor who plays Pete. Here's some clips from the story.
Degrassi Street. It's a humble little street with an unassuming grocery store on the corner. And it's also the setting for an award-winning children's television series.
The response to these shows is incredible. I learned this is a camera, and this is what I'm supposed to talk into and whatever.
The episodes being shot in the back alleys of Toronto now will be aired on the CBC starting in December.
I'll link the full story in the description below, but it's some of the only behind-the-scenes content we have from this era of Degrassi. The Next Generation did online mini-sodes that explored behind the scenes, and up through Next Class, social media and YouTube channels meant we had constant access to what the actors were up to on set. So this video from 37 years ago was very exciting to find. The next episode is Ryan Runs for Help. It's the only time we meet Ryan, but the idea is he's the boy who cries wolf, and he's also Benjamin's best friend. Now, Benjamin gets in trouble and Ryan has to go for help, but of course, no one believes him. He goes to find Benjamin's brother Billy, who's doing a walkathon to raise money for the Degrassi yearbook. It's really important to Billy, and he doesn't want to give it up, only to find out Ryan's lied. But of course, Billy chooses his brother and goes to save him. Now, great morals, great story. However, there is a moment where Ryan's alone at the park, and this guy comes up to Ryan, and he's obviously like a predator. Listen to this.
Who was that man?
I don't know.
Are you crazy or something? Don't you know you're not supposed to talk to strangers?
He wasn't a stranger. He knew my name.
It's written on your shirt, dummy.
Oh, right.
Degrassi, you're just going to casually reveal there's a child predator roaming around Degrassi Street, and your main character is just like, oh, whoopsie. What? Anyway, last week I also talked about Martin Hears the Music, which is our next episode. The A plot is that Martin gets a hearing aid and he's worried about being judged. The B plot, of course, mirrors this. Rachel's having issues with her body image and she's worried what other people will think of her. And all this takes place during the Degrassi Elementary School talent show where they're raising money for the yearbook. One thing I loved is the skit put on by Lisa and Casey.
Da-da-da-da-da-dun. I'm Phyllis. I'm Fred. We're going so together, man.
If you think it seems familiar, it's because it's the same skit that Caitlin and Arthur do in Degrassi High's talent show.
I'm Phyllis. I'm Fred. We're going so together, man.
Now, I'm not sure why Susie didn't do the skit with Caitlin because Sarah doesn't leave the show for another full season, but it's still a really cool fun fact. The next episode is Lisa Gets the Picture. The yearbook committee has now finally raised enough money, but they're in a time crunch to get it finished. Lisa and Casey are in charge of getting pictures for the yearbook, but they're having a hard time, so they think to ask Griff for help because he loves to draw. However, as we remember, Lisa and Griff had that awkward date and haven't talked since. They do make up, but now Lisa spends all of her time with Griff, leaving Casey entirely alone to work on the yearbook. In the end, Lisa admits she wasn't being a good friend, and Casey admits she was feeling jealous. But there's 2 things that I love about this episode. When Lisa apologizes to Casey, she lists a bunch of memories they have together, and you'll recognize all of them from previous episodes.
What about the time we did the Degrassi Journal? And nobody bought it? And when Gail and my dad had their wedding? And we wore jewels? And what about the time when we got Rabbit and had that stupid fight? I guess I was thinking so much about the future. I almost forgot that we're best friends.
I love when Degrassi does callbacks like that. It's just so fun to notice them when they come up. And second, we see in the episode Casey's conducting interviews. She asks, "What's your biggest pet peeve? What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the reason I love this is because the real-life cast of Degrassi Junior High made a yearbook for all the actors. They list their real pet peeves, their dream careers, and so on. To see some of the pages from the yearbook, you can check the Twitter thread I do for each episode, linked in the description below.
I'm gonna be a mechanic. My mom just had her car fixed. Mechanics make a lot of money.
And that brings us to our final episode, Griff Gets a Hand. Griff has a close relationship with the school's crossing guard, Danny. Griff promises Danny that he'll draw him a picture, but he keeps getting delayed because of schoolwork and the yearbook. But when Griff finally brings the picture the next morning, Danny isn't there, and Miss Gonzalez has a difficult conversation to an elementary school classroom about grief and loss.
I'm afraid I have some very bad news for you today. You're going to hear about it sooner or later, but I don't like rumors. I'm afraid that Danny O'Brien, our crossing guard, died last night. He had a stroke.
This is really a big episode for Degrassi to end on, and there's a lot of big emotions. On top of Griff's grief, he comes home to an invalidating environment. His brother Duke often makes fun of him, even dismissing his upcoming graduation.
Are you gonna come?
Me? No way you'll catch me inside of school.
Griff is obviously disappointed, and he gets into a fight with Duke. Now, they do make up, and they have this impactful scene.
I'm sorry.
What do you care about Danny?
I care about you. You're all the family I've got.
And we remember that Duke will go on to play Wheel's biological father. Wheels goes to find him after his adoptive parents are killed by a drunk driver. In this series, we learn that Griff and Duke's parents also die in a car crash. And that's not the only influence that carries over into Degrassi Junior High. Neil Hope plays Derek Wheeler, who goes by Wheels, and for now he plays Robin Griffith, who goes by Griff. We also see an influence over Stacy's character. Lisa's the good girl who helps out the bad boy with school, and Caitlin will go on to have a similar relationship with Joey, who struggles academically. At the end of the episode, Griff's drawing of Danny makes it into the completed yearbook, and the class graduates. Aww. And that's it. I feel almost sad to say that we've done it. We've made it through the 26 episodes of the Kids of Degrassi Street. From September 1979 to January 1986, co-creators Linda Schuyler and Kit Hood have experimented with storytelling for children through film. But most importantly, they've prepared themselves to go on and make a franchise that will last for over 40 years. At the time of filming this video essay, Degrassi's announced another reboot for the year 2023, and it's just going to live forever, and I'm totally okay with that. But before we go, let's break it down. What has Degrassi done? Degrassi's found a group of people who will carry over to Degrassi Junior High. Head writer Yan Moore, cinematographer Philip Earnshaw, production manager Sari Friedland, and of course the actors, Stacey Mistysyn, Neil Hope, Anais Granovsky, Arlene Lott, John Iano, Sarah Charlesworth and Christopher Charlesworth, Tyson Talbot, and Dana Jean Brown all will graduate to Degrassi Junior High. Degrassi started to follow ABC's story structure and implementing story arcs, which will continue to happen forever. And mostly, Degrassi cemented some rules. The actors must be age appropriate, no 30-year-olds playing teenagers. The story has to be from the kids' perspective, meaning no adult-only conversations unless kids are present. And each episode will have a theme, like the fear of a hospital or just being yourself. And conflict isn't always 100% resolved at the end of an episode, like with Griff and Lisa's season-long feud. The Kids of Degrassi Street is often forgotten about, but without this tiny little Canadian show made on a small one-way street in Toronto, we wouldn't have the show we love today, and I am so grateful for it. But I hope you learned something, and now you can tell all your friends what you learned about the history of Degrassi.
Pete? Pete Riley? Congratulations, nice job. Casey? Casey Ross?